Continuing production of The Open Mind has been made possible by grants from the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, the Bluestein Family Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, the Malkin Fund, the Center for Educational Outreach and Innovation at Teachers College, Columbia University, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America and Rudolph Finn. I'm Richard Heffner, your host on The Open Mind, and I think perhaps it was George Will who put today's subject most succinctly, reflecting that anti-Semitism is the world's most durable ideology. Surely it has been the most persistent and pernicious throughout my near fourscore years, and though my guest and I discussed anti-Semitism here just a couple of years ago, its outrages remain such a source of concern for all thoughtful persons and surface so often these days in the British and Italian press, in the streets of France and Germany and elsewhere beyond our borders, even in truly disturbing public opinion polls here in the United States. I return to it again with writer, teacher, much-honored Nobel Peace Prize laureate Elie Wiesel, witness to and victim of the inhumanity of anti-Semitism in the years of the Holocaust. Now, my guest has joined me here on The Open Mind many times over the past 20 years. Indeed, the transcript of the 24 and more programs we have done together, edited by Tom Vinciguerra, form the basis of the most recent softcover edition of our Random House Schocken Press volume titled Conversations with Elie Wiesel. And as I look back over our book, ranging from our very first conversation on the nature of human nature, I can't help but imagine the pain my guest feels as he must again and again, seemingly unendingly, without surcease, face the abomination of anti-Semitism. And I ask, I hope he will not think brutally, as I have asked Elie Wiesel before, in its presence, what faith can he maintain? Elie, that's a question we've discussed before, and I wonder about your ability to maintain your faith.
You and I have been friends for so many years. Isn't it sad that when two friends meet, we should discuss anti-Semitism?
Yeah.
We should discuss literature, poetry, beauty, music, and even more than that, just our lives. And here we are to discuss anti-Semitism, one of the ugliest manifestations of the human spirit, because it is stupid. The anti-Semite is not only a racist, he's stupid.
Why do you say stupid?
Because he really believes that we control the world. That is absolutely the basis of the Protocols of the Sages of Zion, which is a kind of Bible for the anti-Semites. They are convinced that we have more money than everybody, more friends in high places, and more to say, and that when we say something, people obey. Come on, they are stupid. They believe that one can be poor and be an anti-Semite, and rich and be an anti-Semite, because they believe that the Jew is to be hated for what he or she is. Now, if we had power, would we have endured so many persecutions, so many tragedies? And even now, the anguish that fills a Jewish child in Israel, especially the parents of the child, never knowing whether the child who's taking the bus to school will not be led afterwards to a cemetery. So it's incredible, but it's there. And what hurts me most, my good friend, you should know that, I'm sure we spoke about it. I was convinced in 1945 that I will not have to fight that battle again. I thought there'll be other battles, but not this one. And here we are. once more to fight what we call the most ancient prejudice in history.
Elie, let me ask a question that is, I won't characterize it. If in 1945 we weren't looking forward to the creation of the State of Israel, do you think you would be experiencing, I would be experiencing, our children would, the potential for anti-Semitism to the degree that we must today?
Jews were hated before Israel was born and after. Somehow it's enduring. Jews were hated because they were believers or non-believers, because they were particularists or universalists. They were hated, and they still are. Except today, because it's true, because of the, let's say, the experience, the historical experience of Israel, things have changed a little bit. The direction has changed. Until, let's say, until recently, last 50 years, who was the anti-Semite? From the right wing, the reactionary, usually for religious reasons. Now it's the left wing. They hate Israel to such an extent that it becomes anti-Semitic, although in the beginning they are not, but it runs over. And what you mentioned, the press in Europe, you see the press, it's anti-Semitic, not only anti-Zionist or anti-Israeli. And therefore, you have in the middle the critical mass of Muslims in Europe. You have 6 million, if not more, Muslims in France. And they are in the middle. They are so violently anti-Israeli that there again, it runs over.
What's going to happen? Not just to us and ours. What's going to happen to a world in which this disease is so prevalent?
Oh, it's not only anti-Semitism. I always believe that who hates, hates everybody. Anti-Semitism is hatred. Hatred is a cancer. And it goes from cell to cell, from limb to limb, from person to person. It begins with anti-Semitism, and then it goes to others. Today, the real threat is the suicide terrorists. It began in Israel, not in Japan. People call it kamikaze. Wrong. The kamikaze was a soldier, and giving his life in order to attack only military targets. The suicide terrorist is a killer, and he mainly kills children, not only in Israel. Look what happened now in Russia. I cry. I don't like to cry. I cry when I saw those children, and the killers shot them in the back. My God, how can they do to children things that they shouldn't even do to their enemies? I would have had sympathy for the Chechens. After all, they want freedom. I am for the people that want this freedom. But they throw me away like that. How? I don't think that they deserve a state, if that is what they do in order to get their independence. There are certain limits. You cannot go beyond those limits and still be called civilized. It's not only there, it's everywhere. Look, in our own country, we live in fear. Let's admit it. The home security is actually a response to fear. And we live in fear. Any day the terrorists can come actually, and you cannot seal the borders, and you cannot turn our nation, which is a nation built on certain values, you cannot make it into dictatorship, which means to use terrorist methods to fight terrorists. You cannot do that.
Elie, that brings me back 20 years and more to the first time we sat at this table, and our topic was the nature of human nature. What are we saying now about that question that we dealt with 20 years ago, when you were, if I remember correctly, much more optimistic, much more positive about the nature of human nature, much more hopeful? Do you remain so?
I force myself. I'm serious. I force myself to be optimistic. I have no right to give despair to our young readers or viewers. I have no right. I can, if I speak of violence in some of my books, because I'm against violence, but the same if I speak of despair, because I'm against despair. And we must do whatever we can to give the proper means to these young people to obtain despair.
Right. Except that, what are we saying about ourselves, about our fellow human beings, about the nature of human nature, if it has room for the horror of the Holocaust, but perhaps even more importantly, the horror that we just witnessed?
Well, first of all, that human nature is we haven't learned anything from that dark period. We haven't learned, again, that whoever kills will go on killing. They kill Jews, but not only Jews. And now they kill everybody who doesn't agree with them. They will kill their own brothers and sisters and parents. They will do that. We haven't learned. Which means we have not transmitted the right message. That's what worries me most. I tried all my life to bear witness and to teach. I'm not sure that we have found the right words.
Do you think perhaps, Elie, and I know what you're going to say no because you must not be despairing, but is it impossible to think of us as unteachable?
Look, we are teachers after all. We are teachers in spite of everything. Look, I think I must have said it 20 years ago, and there are certain things which I believe I cannot give in. Therefore, I cannot give up. It's true. There are all the elements now that move me to despair, because I see what's happening again, not only in Israel. Israel is closest to me, therefore, of course, I suffer with Israel whenever tragedy strikes Israel. But when I see others as well, it's all over the world. To this day, there are 65 conflicts on the planet. Haven't people learned anything about war? That war is grotesque, that it's brutal. War means corpses, orphans, widows. They go on.
You can't believe that. You can't believe that it is true, but it does seem to be true that we don't learn.
Yes, but we must be honest. Who are these people who do that? They are a minority. In every country they are a minority. Even in Islam they are a minority. So I don't want that they should hijack history, that we should say, therefore, because these people in these places, let's say the extremists in certain lands, because they do what they are doing, that they are inhuman, that they are traitors against humanity, that I should say, therefore, humanity is bad. There are also people who fight them with words or with political means, or they fight them, they oppose them. They too are part of humanity. So I would rather wager on humanity. But I say it with a heavy heart. You know that.
Good and evil. We're in the midst of once again, of political exchanges in which presumably the forces of evil are arrayed against the forces of good. Hasn't that been a curse we have suffered from throughout man's history?
From Cain and Abel. But it began actually with Adam and Eve. When they ate from the wrong tree, my God.
The wrong tree.
The wrong tree. God said, eat from anything, not that. And God was a very poor psychologist then. Because he should have known that because he said, don't touch that tree, don't eat from that tree, they will precisely eat from that tree. God should learn psychology. But then came Cain and Abel, the first murder. Death entered history as a murder. And what murder? A brother killed a brother. So of course we know that. But Adam and Eve had other children. They didn't stop. Had they stopped, I think it would have been better. But then we wouldn't have our exchange here.
You're joking, of course.
So, yes.
But maybe you're right. Maybe it is not a joke.
It's not a joke. It's not, because 2,000 years ago when the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, there were people, they were called the Pharisees, and they left their wives. Pharisee means, from the word parosh, from separating, they separated from their wives. And they said, we don't want to have children anymore. They said, if this is what God wants, to destroy a temple, a city, a people, we don't want more children. I understand them. But they were overruled.
If this is what God wants, and and I touch on these grounds very gingerly. Your own faith, you've never been ready, willing, or able to talk about faith and God.
I think we should have another book. We should have another volume, second volume, 20 years later. Oh, I do, naturally I do. I cannot not do, because I remained inside faith. I never divorced God. I wanted to be rather a victim of God than be an orphan of God.
Explain yourself, please.
Meaning, I never gave up on God. I went on believing, and because I believed that I have problems with Him, I still have problems with Him. I quarrel with Him all the time. How can you? I always ask Him, how can you? You are the one who gave us the law. You have written this and this and this. How can you be silent? You want me to speak up when an injustice is committed. You want me to bear witness when a person suffers. Here you have millions of people suffering, and you are silent? I speak, but always from within, because I come from a very religious family. My father was religious, my grandfather and his. I go back many, many generations. In our tradition, we become descendants of Rashi, the great commentator. I don't want to be the last who speaks to God.
What is the answer you receive? Pray tell.
That's the problem. He doesn't answer. Or maybe he does. That's what the theologians will tell you. Maybe he does. But I ask the questions in my language, and maybe God answers in his. But it's not the same language.
Why don't you hear the language? Or
maybe because God doesn't want me to hear the language. When we speak theologically, of course, we go from question to question, not from answer to answer. The answer is a phonetic's answer, but not a theologian's answer. The question should be, there was a great Hasidic master who had a great sense of humor. He said, if the atheist knew that even his denial of God is willed by God, will that be for him a punishment?
Why do Jews ask questions? Always answer with a question.
Because we are the question mark in history. Really, what are we doing in history? We are the only people of antiquity to have survived antiquity.
That's a very interesting point.
Furthermore, there wasn't a period in history where somewhere on the planet Jews were not persecuted. And it was always as if history were to say that to the Jewish people, what are you doing here? We don't want you. Go away. So they tried persecution, didn't work. They tried seduction, it didn't work. There were times in Poland when a Jew converted, he got nobility, they tried everything. In Spain, if a Jew converted, really, he wasn't touched. They tried everything. And here they are, and they say, why? What are you doing here? I wrote a play once called Zalman and the Madness of God. It was shown, and it's a play. In that, it's about Russia, actually. And there I describe an old rabbi, the last rabbi in a certain place.
Zalman and the Madness of God.
Yes. So an old rabbi, and his daughter married, of course, a Jewish boy. He was a communist. In those times, many Jews were communists. And they were arguing about the rabbi's grandson who was going to have bar mitzvah. And finally, the young Jew, the communist, said to the rabbi, listen, I have told you 1,000 times, and I will say it again. I am a communist. I don't want my son to be Jewish, because I don't want my son to suffer. My father suffered as a Jew. My grandfather suffered as a Jew. His grandfather suffered as a Jew. I don't want my son to suffer as a Jew. I want that hatred and that suffering to stop. And with my son it will. When I wrote that part, I had problems. It's a good argument. What can I answer a father who says, I don't want my son to suffer simply because if he remains a Jew, he will suffer?
How did you answer?
Oh, I answered that it's not so really. Judaism is not a history of suffering. It's a history of responses to suffering. What are we doing with suffering? We try to transform it, surely to limit it. I don't want people to suffer because I suffered. I suffered, and therefore I don't want other people to suffer.
But therefore the question that the communist asked was a very good one.
It's a very good one. A very good one. Except I don't believe it's possible. It doesn't work. We tried even that. It doesn't work in Jewish history. The grandchildren of great communists come back to their Judaism. Companions of Lenin who left Judaism, their grandchildren turned back to Judaism.
Proving what, Elie?
Oh, I proved it. First of all, it proves the power of memory. If you want to define the Jewish people's obsession, it's surely not with money, as the anti-Semites say, not even with power, as other anti-Semites would say. It's with memory.
Memory, not genes.
Genes have their own memory. The DNA has a code, a memory code.
What's happening to that memory in this country now?
Oh, in this country, I am so depressed. I don't want you to know because of the way this campaign is being waged. I don't remember a campaign being so mean, so nasty. I'm thinking of writing something about it because I cannot take it. I would like an election campaign, especially in such a country which has such power and such prestige, such ideals, to speak about ideals, not to go down, not to bring the debate down, but lift it up. Really, we see, what do we hear now? People accusing each other, not the candidates themselves, but on both sides, they're surrogates. They speak about lying, about falsifying. Really, is there one speech in this campaign which will go down in history as a great speech? About ideals, about values, about aspirations, about dreams. So I don't know really what else we could do really, because after all, again, we teach. But to teach a generation takes a long time.
But from what you have just said, and certainly from the way I have read you and heard you, and from what I feel myself to be so true, it is not that we have not yet succeeded in teaching. It's that we have moved back and back and back. You just said you don't remember a campaign like this in our country at a time when we let all those older values go by the board. Oh, there have always been tricks and games played, games in quotation marks. But that's different from...
Not like this again. It's mean. It's just mean.
So much at stake.
Yes, but it's always been at stake like that. The presidency, after all, is a seat of power, not only for America, for the whole world now. And you are waiting. You want to hear a word, a message. On either side, really. I'm not a politician. I don't take
You think somebody would believe it? I mean, isn't that the problem, that we don't believe anything anymore?
If it's said properly, if the person who says the words would believe in them. It's true that people are cynical, true, because they have learned their lesson, the wrong lesson, but they have learned the lesson, that politics is a dirty business. It used to be a noble business, to work in ancient Greece when they began, to work for the polis, for the city, for the republic, for the community. Is there anything more elegant, anything more inspiring and inspired than that? To work, then one should be worthy of that power that one wants to get and get. I don't really know, maybe they have the wrong advisors. They should take poets as advisors, philosophers, and not politicians.
Yes, but you once said that the closer a poet, the closer an intellectual gets to the seat of power, the less you like it.
It's true, because the Talmudic sage said to me, it means in the books, in the Ethics of Our Father, don't come too close to power. Absolutely. It's dangerous, because power is seductive.
Do you wish that even more than you have in your lifetime, you were closer to power in any way?
No, no.
Couldn't you have achieved more of what you wanted to achieve?
I don't think so, no. What I have achieved, I've achieved nothing really, except I've written books. I think I've given, I'm serious, I'm not
That's not achievement?
I'm not playing modest, we know each other too well. Achievement means, in terms of power, of
okay.
I don't think, look, my books are not bestsellers, and you know very well, they're not bestsellers. I write them because I must write them, not because I want to sell them. I write them, I have no choice, I want to write them. What else would I do? But to say that I have any power, no, and I don't want that.
You think then, and we have 30 seconds left, that the wrong people are advising our candidates rather than that the candidates are the wrong people?
No, I think the wrong people, why should I say wrong? I would have preferred, let's say, those people who advise them should advise them in matters of ideals, not in tactic. But politics is a matter for tactics, and I am not a tactician.
Elie, I wonder what the case will be as we look back when we meet again, 2 years from now, 1 year from now, 4 years from now. Look back whether things will have gotten even worse.
No, I hope not.
Because they couldn't, or because you want things to be better?
Because I want tomorrow to be better. I told one of your people who work with you here, whenever I go into my classroom, I see these young boys and young girls, all beautiful, eager to learn. I feel sad for them. We believe that the 21st century will be a better century because of the 20th century. And its shadow still being felt here. I felt this one will be a better century. Look, we are 4 years in the century.
It'll be better, Elie.
It must be better.
Thank you for joining me again today. And thanks too to you in the audience. I hope you join us again next time. And if you would like a transcript of today's program, please send $4 in check or money order to the Open Mind, P.O. Box 7977, FDR Station, New York, New York 10150. Meanwhile, as another old friend used to say, good night and good luck.